Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Raise Hail Report. I am your host, Matthew Heiserman, and today we are joined by 98.5, the Sports Hub radio host, Alex Barth. The Commanders played their first preseason game this Friday against the Patriots. They faced off against each other in a joint practice yesterday. There's a lot to talk about. Alex, it's great to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Getting right into it, we're going to start with a little bit of a breakdown from that joint practice. Then we're going to get into the game tomorrow. So the Commanders and the Patriots played each other yesterday prior to their preseason game. First and foremost, you had Drake May out there. You had Jaden Daniels out there. How do you kind of evaluate the QB performances from both of those guys?
May had a really good day. May had one of his best practices since he's joined the Patriots. I thought he was in command. I thought he was efficient. I think he did a good job making up for some of the deficiencies in the Patriots offense. I'll be honest, I mostly watched the offense, the Patriots offense. My another writer for our website, Matt Dolph, 98.5 Sports, I mostly watched defense. What I saw from Daniels, like his process is impressive. The receivers were not getting open. They were not giving him a lot of help. And I think he did as much as he could within that. But I don't think he got as much help from his teammates as Drake made it.
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to touch on that. You said he might not have gotten as much help. Washington's wide receiver room was much worse yesterday than it typically is. You had the absence of Terry McLaurin, obviously. Noah Brown is injured and didn't go on this trip for the practice or the preseason game. So they were missing two of their top three receivers. Could you kind of tell a big difference in that wide receiver room? And, how well did they adjust without those two guys there?
Yeah, you could tell. Like, there's a lack of talent with the guys that were on the field, and I get that's not everybody they have on the roster. Especially McLaurin, it would look a lot different with him on the field, but also the Patriots are without their top two corners. Christian Gonzalez and Carlton Davis didn't practice. So I don't know if you want to say that levels the playing field or whatever you want to call that, but it was noticeable how much the Washington receivers were struggling to get separation. Zach Ertz was getting open. Zach Ertz had a good practice at tight end, but it was notable that the Washington receivers really could not do much to separate against the Patriots' top defense.
And then I know you said that you focus mostly on the offense. So the last thing I want to talk about, regarding the defense is the offensive line. I know Josh Connerly Jr. had a lot of reps against Harold Landry and Christian Barmore. I know Laramie Tunsil is one of the guys who people are saying had the best performance yesterday for Washington. What did you see from Washington's offensive line? How did they hold up against New England's defensive line yesterday?
I would agree with that on Tunsil. I thought he had a good practice. The interior guys, so they were without, I think, a couple of their interior starters, if I remember correctly. You'd probably know better than me the names on that. But I thought Christian Barmore had a really good practice. Kind of beat up on that interior a little bit. Kyrus Tonga had a good practice. But again, I think that, if I remember correctly, I apologize, I don't remember the names for Washington. But that, I believe that was against backups for Washington. So you can take that with a grain of salt.
Absolutely. And then, there's multiple rookies to keep an eye out for on both of these teams. We're not quite sure who's going to play tomorrow, who's not going to play. But you got Trey Amos, Will Campbell, Kyle Williams, just to name a few. From what you saw, which rookies really shined during the joint practice yesterday?
For the Commanders?
Either team.
For either team. So I thought the Patriots offensive linemen, both of them, Will Campbell, the first-round pick, and then Jared Wilson, the third-round pick on the left side. This was their first test against, opposing NFL competition, and I thought they both had a really good practice. I liked what I saw from them. On the Commanders side of things, I'm trying to remember who their rookies are off the top of my head. Croskey-Merritt, Croskey, I thought, had a nice practice for what it was. Connerly was fine. He got beat a couple times. I wouldn't say it was a worrying practice. I don't think he had the best practice ever. I think he was okay. It was about what I'd expect from a rookie. But yeah, I was mostly, again, looking at the Patriots rookies, the two guys on the left side, Campbell and Jared Wilson, I thought had a good day.
And then, getting into the Patriots a little bit, But before we get there,
Yeah.
there was Jeremy Fowler was on a show today. It was with Commanders YouTuber Rio Robinson, and he stated that there was one team that was really eyeing Terry McLaurin. So before we go to some Patriots talk, do you think that team could have been New England? How interested do you think they are in pursuing Terry right now?
So I can't speak to their interest in Terry McLaurin specifically. What I can
Mhm.
tell you is that going back the last 2 years, every one of these wide receivers that has become semi-available, whether it
Yeah.
was Brandon Ayuk last
Mhm.
offseason, whether it was DK Metcalf, right? T. Higgins when we thought he might get moved before he got tagged.
Debo
The
back in
Patri-
2022.
Debo, yeah, the Patriots
Mhm.
have been linked to all of these guys.
Yeah.
And it's kind of been the same standard package, second round pick plus. Um, so I don't really know why you would draw the line at McLaurin. I
Mhm.
think he's a better player, certainly, than Ayuk. I'm higher on DK Metcalf than most. I think they're
Mhm.
comparable when you factor in age and all of that. Um, I'd be surprised if they weren't interested in McLaurin just based on their track record. I can't tell you specifically that they are. I don't know that for sure that they were that one team, like you mentioned,
Mhm.
but it would fit the pattern. So, and they need the wide receiver. Like they still obviously need the guy.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if that was them at all. And if I know Diana Rossini was on my station on 98.sportshub.com and
Yeah.
said McLaurin's not going to get moved. So there's that. But it's the NFL. These things change. If
Mhm.
the circumstances do change, right? I would not be surprised to find out the Patriots are, I don't think
Mhm.
they'd be the only team, but one of the teams that's making a
Yeah.
real push to add McLaurin.
So then Mike Vrabel, right? This is his first off season with the Patriots. He was hired back in January. This was the first practice we saw with him against another team. This is going to be his first game against another team with New England. What has kind of been your initial reaction with him so far?
Sorry, you cut out there with who?
With Mike Vrabel.
With Mike Vrabel. It's been great. It's been great. I think that they got things just the ends weren't tied together, if that makes sense. The details kind of
Mhm.
got away from them. Even going back to last year under Belichick and then certainly under Gerard Mayo last year. And it just, he's talked a lot. His big message has been like talking about the pillars of his program. The
Mhm.
first one he always brings up is just being good enough to take advantage of bad football and not shooting themselves in the foot and not being a team that creates the opportunities off of bad football. Their schedule is not good this year.
Yeah.
So if they can do that, that alone might get them to 6 or 7 wins.
Mhm.
And you're still gonna have to steal a couple games to make the playoffs, obviously. But I just think that he's elevated the floor a lot
Mhm.
because I think there's much more of a focus on the details than there was the last couple of years.
And then, with Vrabel being a former NFL linebacker, do you feel like he's been more focused on working with the defense, considering that's his specialty, or has he kind of kept things fairly, balanced between both sides, working with the offense a lot as well, or has he kind of left that to the offensive coordinator to handle?
He's actually spent most of his time with the offense. And they have a good offensive coordinator in Josh McDaniels, but that's the side of the ball that needs to work. Like the
Mhm.
defense has talent. Um, it's a group of proven players. The offense is much younger. It's a new
Mhm.
install of that. I guess the defense is a new install too, but he
Yeah.
spent a lot of time with the offense. Now the thing about Vrabel is he has prided himself and he's talked a lot about being a full football coach and being aware of everything. So he gets fired by Tennessee after the 23 season. Last year, he goes to Cleveland as a senior advisor and actually spent most of his time with the offensive line and tight ends.
Mhm.
So he really took a crash course on the offensive side of the ball. He also did play a little offense for the Patriots. He caught touchdowns in multiple Super Bowls. He's, I believe, the most catches in NFL history without an incompletion. I think it's 10 for 10, 12 for 12, something like that.
Mhm.
So, without an incompletion on target. So, no, he's actually spending a lot of time with the offense. He's spending, when they're split up, he's spending a significant amount of time on the offensive side of the ball. I don't think he's necessarily like rendering Josh McDaniels irrelevant. I think that's more overseeing than replacing, but he's been with the offense a lot.
100%. And then, there were multiple scuffles during practice yesterday. Marshawn
Yeah.
Lattimore got into it during one play. Travion Henderson got into it on one play. No major fights broke out, but do you kind of see that? Do you get the feeling where that tension might be carried into this game tomorrow, or is it kind of past both of these teams?
I think it's past it in part because I think the guys who were in the fights probably aren't going to play a ton.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember. I think Dan Quinn said Lattimore's not going to play in the game. I might be mistaken on that, but I know he said a number of the starters won't. I don't know how much Keyshawn Booty's going to play for the Patriots. I think he's kind of carved out his role. Travion Henderson's a rookie. He was in that second one. Will Campbell's a rookie. He was in that second one. Other than Von Miller, I'd be shocked if he plays in this game.
Definitely won't.
And also just I think these guys know, like in a game, you're going to call it for a penalty. That's going to look bad. If you're playing significant snaps in the game, you're competing for a roster spot. If you're competing for a roster spot, you can't be flagged for that kind of penalty. So, you never know, but I'd be pretty surprised if it carries over to any significant degree.
And I feel like we're always seeing these kind of scuffles during joint practice, a lot more than what you'll see in games. Like I know the Ravens and the Colts got into it yesterday, and that's just one example. Why do you feel like we see so many fights break out during the joint practices to start the preseason?
I mean, there's fights in regular training camp practices too, not as much as there used to be, because these guys are jacked up. They're trying to prove something. They're also taking care of their own teammates. Here comes another team in, so you don't know these guys. You're not as face to face with them. Somebody else is trying to prove a point. You don't like it. Somebody's trying to prove a point. Like I think it's just a very energy, adrenaline-filled environment, and these guys are apex competitors. These guys they see red when the littlest thing happens because you have to be wired that way to play in the NFL. I think that's just part of it.
And if you're tuning in, make sure you like and subscribe. It's completely free, helps the channel grow a ton. And then, Dan Quinn ruled out the possibility of Daniels starting tomorrow. He ruled out the possibility of a lot of players starting. But the Patriots have kind of left that door open to using some of their starters. How much, if any, playing time can we expect Drake May to get tomorrow?
I think he's going to play. I don't think a lot. Series or two, no more than a quarter. Mike Vrabel talked about balancing the joint practice reps and the game reps as kind of one entity. And you're looking about how much the guys rep between those two. May rep a ton in that joint practice. So I can't imagine they feel like he needs to get that many more snaps in this setting. But I do think he's going to play.
And then the majority of the quarterback snaps are probably coming from Josh Dobbs for New England and then Sam Hartman for Washington. How do you kind of view that quarterback battle? What can we expect from both of those guys?
Well, it's two kind of different sides of it, where Josh Dobbs has been in the league. He started games. He has more experience. I think for him, it's just getting comfortable with this offense and getting comfortable with some of the receivers. Sam, I don't know. Is it going to be Sam Hartman or is it going to be Josh Johnson? Because Josh Johnson was getting a lot of reps on Wednesday. So I don't know if that's all right. Josh Johnson's going to get the practice reps. Sam Hartman's going to get the game reps, or Josh Johnson's QB2. We're getting him ready for this game. I don't know how to interpret that.
I'd assume it's going to be mostly Hartman just because he's the guy with more to prove. He was put fourth on the depth chart, the unofficial one that they released the other day. So I'd imagine they want to go with the young guy, let him, have a little bit of competition out there.
That's what I was going to say, where for Josh Dobbs, who has his roster spot, and he's going to be the backup quarterback, and I think it's just a level of familiarity thing. Sam Hartman's got to pass Josh Johnson, and he's got to become the backup. So he's going to be out there with a little more to prove, maybe a little more of a gunslinger mentality. So that's always fun to watch. Like guys playing, especially the quarterback position for a job, you're not taking checkdowns. You're throwing the ball down the field. You're trying to create the highlight, right? So I was like watching those guys in the preseason. I would put Hartman in that category.
100%. And then, with Kendrick Bourne hurt, Jalen Polk has, had some struggles during training camp so far. Stephon Diggs likely not going to play too much tomorrow, if at all. You're still going to have Pop Douglas out there, who's going to be the top receiver for New England, but are there any under-the-radar guys who could really use this as an opportunity to prove themselves with a lot of the wide receivers, either injured or just not getting much of a role tomorrow?
Yeah, so I look at Javon Baker. He was their fourth-round pick last year, had a very disappointing year, as did Polk. And a lot of people are writing them both off as cuts, new coaching staff, new offense, and Polk hasn't done much. Like you said, Baker's actually had a strong camp. And it hasn't been perfect, but he's had a solid camp. And he's now, if they had to make the cuts today, I don't think he's on the team, but he's trending in the right direction. And a big game would certainly go a long way in helping him, if not make this roster, make a roster. Maybe he creates some trade value. I said on the show today, maybe Washington needs receivers. Even if McLaurin comes back, they need more in that room. Maybe Washington looks at it. Hey, this guy lit us up. Let's, give up a 7th-round pick, 6th-round pick swap to get him. Something like that. So I think Javon Baker has a ton to prove in this game.
And I think Baker's in a similar boat to Luke McCaffrey for Washington, just in terms of the fact that McCaffrey was a third-rounder last season. He had only 18 receptions for 168 receiving yards. And now you have Terry, who's not going to be there. Noah Brown's not going to be there. He could definitely use this as an opportunity as well to get a few more targets, hopefully emerge as one of the top receivers on Friday. But what? Who are some guys for the Patriots that you're really going to be watching this upcoming game? Some guys that maybe a good or bad performance could determine whether they do or don't make the 53-man.
So Baker would be towards the top of that list, certainly. Lamb Larison, a UDFA running back, is a guy I like, but he's the 4th stringer right now. So watching him on special teams as much as anything else, because that's where he's going to win the roster spot. There's not a lot of clarity in the Patriots' backup tackle situation. It's Demontre Jacobs, Vidarian Lowe, who were the 2 starters last year, who were not good, and then rookie Marcus Bryant fighting for that job. Mm-hmm. So I think kind of how that whole thing shakes out will be something to watch. And then just the run defense as a whole. It's something I'm worried about with this team. I don't know how much they're going to go against the Commander starters, but just in general, how well they stop the run.
And then my final question before we wrap things up, when it's all said and done, what are you looking forward to the most with this game? Who are you going to be paying the most attention to?
Objectively, what am I looking forward to the most? They're unveiling the Tom Brady statue pregame, and he's going to be here. So that will be pretty cool. In terms of the game itself, just football being back and kind of the operation. The Patriots were a sloppy team last year in terms of penalties and turnovers, and that was apparent in the preseason. And I think a lot of people were quick to chalk that up to, hey, it's the preseason. But looking back on it, probably should have been more of a red flag than it was. So new coaching staff, a lot of roster turnover. I know it's not the fun answer, but I think for me, a big thing is just, are they getting in and out of the huddle? Are they lining up correctly? Are they having to burn bad timeouts? Are they committing penalties? Things like that. For a team with a first-year head coach and really an entirely new coaching staff, the first look at the operation of it is important. So I'll be keeping a close eye on that tomorrow for sure.
And if you made it up to this point, make sure you like and subscribe. It's completely free on the road to 150 subs before the start of the 2025 NFL season. With that being said, I can't thank you enough for coming on. Is there anything else you want to say before we wrap things up? Where can the people watching find some of your work?
Yeah, 985thesportshub.com, Catch 22 podcast on Patriots.com with Devin Lazar, and the Patriots Beat podcast on CLNS Media.
Yeah, make sure you check out some of Alex's work. And, Matthew Heiserman here on the Raise Hail Report alongside Alex Barth. As always, we will see you next time.